Hello, my friends, and welcome to Lucky English for Beginners. Now we learn English through the history of FIFA World Cup. I want you to close your eyes for a second. Imagine a very specific, almost like a movie scene.
Okay, I am imagining it.
Good. It is the year 1930. You are standing on the wooden deck of a big passenger ship. You are somewhere out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The water all around you is very wide and gray, and the wind is completely freezing.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a very difficult trip.
It really was, and standing not too far from you on this ship is a man. He is holding a small bag very tightly against his body, like his life depended on it. And inside that bag, it is a golden trophy.
A golden trophy, just out there on a boat.
Yes, exactly. It is pretty small, weighing less than 4 kilograms. No one asked him to bring it. There is no, massive welcome party waiting for him on the other side. Honestly, most people think he is completely crazy.
Right, but he is smiling, I assume.
Yes, he is just smiling. He is smiling because he is holding on to a very quiet, powerful belief.
And that man standing on the freezing deck was Jules Rimet. He was the president of FIFA at the time. And he was making that very hard cross-Atlantic journey to Uruguay.
Exactly. And today, the mission of this deep dive is to look at the incredible evolution of what he was carrying.
Right. And I do not mean the physical gold, I mean the idea itself.
We are going to explore how a game that began with a completely forgettable 0-0 draw somehow grew into a universal language.
A language that is now spoken, understood, and felt by 6 billion people all over the world.
Yes, because this is not just sports history. It is a sociological look, meaning a look at human society, at how this simple game survived wars and boycotts and even literal thefts.
It really is a mirror for the entire planet. Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand what Rimet was doing on that boat, we have to go back way further than 1930.
How far back are we going?
We actually have to drop into a freezing cold Tuesday afternoon in Scotland, November 30th, 1872.
The very beginning. Yes. Picture a muddy field in the city of Glasgow. 2 teams walk onto the pitch, one in dark blue, one in white. It is Scotland playing against England. You have about 4,000 people watching around the grass.
And, if you were to watch a videotape of this historic match today, you would probably fall asleep.
Oh, completely. It would be so boring.
Yes, because by modern standards, nothing happens. Nobody scores. The match ends 0-0. It just goes on for 90 minutes with zero drama. From an entertainment perspective, it is, totally forgettable.
Right. But historically, it is anything but forgettable. This was the first official international football match in human history.
A huge milestone.
I look at the 0-0 draw as essentially a beta test of a global peace treaty. A beta test is like an early experiment. It sounds boring on the surface, but it is a massive proof of concept.
Exactly. You had 2 different nations agreeing to settle their rivalry on a sports pitch.
Right. They chose to face each other, not with armies, not with economic sanctions, but with 11 guys and a leather ball.
What's fascinating here is how that microscopic idea you could substitute war with sport started creating these enormous effects in society. The idea spread from Britain into mainland Europe. Then it jumped to South America, Africa, and Asia.
And as it crossed borders, the style of the game changed, right? It evolved.
Yes, it did. Fast forward to the 1920s. Football is now a part of the Olympic Games. During the 1924 Olympics in Paris, a small South American group arrives, Uruguay.
And the big European powers barely even noticed they were there, I bet.
Exactly, because European football at the time was very rigid. It was highly physical, very strategic, like a military operation. But Uruguay walked onto the pitch and introduced a style that completely confused the European defense.
How was it different?
It was incredibly fast, beautifully fluid, and deeply creative. It looked like joy.
I read that the crowds in the Parisian stadiums actually fell completely silent at first because they were so confused by the speed of it, and then they just started cheering wildly.
Yes. Uruguay did not just win the gold medal in 1924. They came back and did it again in 1928. It completely stunned the old world.
Suddenly, this small nation had an answer that the rich European empires simply could not match. And Jules Rimet was watching from the stands. He realized football had outgrown the Olympics.
It needed its own stage. So Rimet pitches the concept of a standalone World Cup at the 1928 FIFA Congress.
And what was his main reason for this?
Well, his core philosophy was that Playing against each other forces nations to actually understand each other. He believed that when 90 minutes of shared rules are enforced, prejudice starts to crack.
But he had no proof of this, right?
Absolutely zero proof. He had no scientific data. He was running purely on blind faith. And that strong will pushed the whole project forward, even when it looked like it was going to crash.
And it really did almost crash. I mean, think about the timing. When Ramed is trying to organize the very first World Cup in 1930, the Great Depression has just ruined the global economy.
Yes, money is virtually non-existent.
Exactly. And getting to Uruguay from Europe meant a 2-week journey on a ship. So what happens? England, Germany, Italy, Spain, they all just say no thanks. They completely refuse to go.
It was just too expensive and too far.
Right. Out of all of Europe, only 4 nations finally agreed to make that miserable journey. France, Belgium, Yugoslavia, and Romania.
The travel logistics were a nightmare. But the details behind those 4 teams are just brilliant. For example, if you look at the Romanian team, the players were not selected by a professional manager.
Wait, who picked them then?
They were personally handpicked by their monarch, King Carol II.
You are joking. The king.
Yes, he literally sat down with a piece of paper, read through a list of amateur players, and dictated the national team himself.
That is so absurd. Can you imagine a modern president or prime minister sitting in an office today picking the starting players for a major tournament?
No, it would never happen. It highlights how different the world was back then. But despite all this chaos, the tournament kicks off in Montevideo on July 13th, 1930.
And who scored the first goal?
The first goal in World Cup history comes from a 23-year-old French guy named Lucien Laurent. He hits this beautiful shot.
And today, his name is basically just a trivia answer. But that single strike was the spark. Uruguay ends up beating Argentina 4-2 in the final.
Yes, playing in front of 93,000 screaming fans.
And Remekwe gets to walk out, hand over that tiny golden trophy, and just smile. His crazy idea survived its first test.
It did. But the tournament immediately started doing something Remeda maybe had not expected. It started acting as a great equalizer.
What do you mean by equalizer?
It began teaching the world that on the football pitch, the small can defeat the large. The poor can defeat the wealthy. It created a space where the big, powerful nations are never safe.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's jump ahead 20 years. To 1950, the tournament goes to Brazil.
Ah, yes. They built the Maracana Stadium in Rio de Janeiro, and it is a monster. It holds 200,000 people.
200,000. That is huge. And Brazil isn't just hosting. They are the heavy favorites to win. The entire nation believes the cup is theirs.
Because of how the rules worked that year, Brazil only needs a tie, just a draw, against Uruguay in the final match to become world champions.
I heard the newspapers even printed victory headlines on the morning of the match. People were celebrating in the streets before the game even started.
But then the unthinkable happened. After Brazil takes an early lead, Uruguay scores, and then late in the game, Uruguay scores again. They win 2-1.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And at the sound of the final whistle, 200,000 people inside that stadium fell into a silence that was terrifying. And that devastating silence swallowed the entire country of Brazil.
They still refer to it as the Maracanazo, the Great Maracana blow. The Uruguayan player who scored the winning goal gave my favorite quote in sports history.
What did he say?
He said, and this is translated, "Only 3 people have ever silenced the Maracana: Frank Sinatra, the Pope, and me."
That is brilliant.
Right. But looking at the history, it makes me wonder about the psychology of that day. Was that deep, painful national trauma the exact thing Brazil needed to create the joyful football of their next generation?
It is a very strong theory. When a culture loses its arrogance so brutally, it often rebuilds itself, because what came out of Brazil after 1950 was miraculous.
Yes, let's talk about 8 years later.
A 17-year-old kid boards a plane to Sweden for the World Cup. He grew up in terrible poverty in Brazil. He could not even afford a real leather ball.
So how did he practice?
He practiced his footwork using a grapefruit, a large fruit like an orange stuffed inside an old sock.
A grapefruit and a sock. That is incredible.
Yes. His real name was Edson Arantes do Nascimento, but the world would soon know him as Pele.
17 years old. You are barely allowed to drive a car at that age. And he becomes the youngest player ever to appear in a World Cup final.
And he scores twice against Sweden. Brazil wins 5-2. When that game ended, Pele just collapsed on the grass and started crying.
His older teammates had to physically carry him off the field.
Yes, but the true magic of that Brazilian era is not just Pele. Because in the 1962 tournament, Pele tears a muscle early on. He is out.
Now, for almost any other nation, losing your best player means you instantly lose the tournament.
Exactly. But Brazil had another player wait. Manuel Francisco dos Santos. Everyone just called him Garincha, which means little bird.
Garincha's physical reality makes his story sound like fiction. He also grew up in extreme poverty. But more importantly, he had severe physical deformities from birth and childhood.
Yes, his spine was crooked.
And his legs, right? His left leg curved inward, and his right leg was noticeably shorter and curved outward. Doctors told him he would never even run normally, let alone play professional sports.
And yet, those exact physical problems made him a nightmare for the other teams. Because his body moved so strangely, you could not predict his movement.
He became the most lethal, joyful dribbler the sport had ever seen.
Yes. With Pele on the bench in '62, Garincha carried the entire Brazilian team to the champion. He played with this infectious amusement, which ties into the deepest theme of the World Cup.
That it provides a stage where human creativity can overcome physical limits and poverty.
Exactly. They win in '62, and then we arrive at Mexico in 1970. The heat is suffocating. The air is very thin.
Pele is back. Garincha is gone. But they bring in new icons. Tostão, Rivellino, Carlos Alberto.
And they operated like a single mind. They beat Italy 4-1 in the final.
And that fourth goal, it is the defining moment of the century. Pele is holding the ball, waiting, and he casually rolls a blind pass directly into the path of Carlos Alberto,
who is sprinting at full speed.
Right, and he just smashes it into the net without slowing down. That team gave the world the absolute definition of Jogo Bonito, the beautiful game.
But to fully appreciate this beautiful game, we have to acknowledge the dark times the tournament survived.
Yeah.
There were eras where the survival of this tradition seemed impossible.
Yes, because right in the middle of our timeline, the Second World War hits. No World Cup in 1942. No World Cup in 1946.
Those massive stadiums were converted into military bases. The athletes traded their sports shirts for military uniforms.
And the physical trophy itself, the Jules Rimet Cup, was suddenly a high-value target for thieves.
Yes. When occupying forces marched into Rome, an Italian vice president of FIFA named Ottorino Barassi realized the trophy was in extreme danger. It might be melted down for the gold.
So what did he do?
He makes a very quiet, dangerous decision. He sneaks into the bank where it was kept. He takes the gold trophy and wraps it in an old cloth.
I cannot get over this next detail. He takes this priceless global icon and he puts it in a beat-up old shoebox.
The shoebox, yes.
And he hides it under his personal bed. For 3 years, as bombs are dropping, he keeps his mouth shut. He just checks under the bed every night to make sure the shoebox is still there.
A golden trophy, an old shoebox, and a single man who stubbornly believed that nations would want to play football together again someday. He protected the future.
And he was right. The tournament revived in 1950. But the bizarre story of the physical trophy does not end there, does it?
No, it does not. In 1966, the tournament is in England, and just months before kickoff, while on public display, the trophy is stolen.
Absolute national panic in the UK. The police are searching everywhere. Scotland Yard is involved. 4 days go by with nothing.
And then a random guy is walking his dog in South London.
The dog is named Pickles.
Yes, Pickles the dog. He starts smelling a bush in a garden. He digs out a heavy package wrapped in old newspaper, and boom, it is the Jules Rimet trophy.
Pickles the dog becomes a global sensation. He is on television. But honestly, I have to challenge our obsession with the golden object itself.
What do you mean?
We care so much about this piece of gold, but to me, the absurdity of the cup spending 3 years in a shoebox and then being rescued by a dog proves a deeper point. The actual World Cup is not made of metal.
No.
No, the real World Cup is the shared emotional investment of the fans. If the gold melted tomorrow, the tournament would not lose any of its power.
This raises an important question about how we define institutions. What actually makes something strong and resilient? You are entirely correct.
Right, because it wasn't saved by good security.
Exactly. It survived world wars and thefts because the idea of the World Cup was secure inside the public mind. The physical object is just a symbol. The emotion is what makes it indestructible.
Exactly. When the referee blows that opening whistle, the feeling that grips your chest, you cannot steal that. You cannot hide that under a bed.
No, you cannot.
And because that feeling is so universal, it was only a matter of time before the rest of the planet demanded their share of it. So what does this all mean?
Well, The tournament had to grow up.
Yes. For its first few decades, it operated like an exclusive dinner party. It was heavily focused on Europe and South America. But eventually, it transformed into a massive global megaphone.
A place where historically marginalized nations that were ignored, could finally force the world to look at them as equal.
And the major turning point for this was the 1966 World Cup, right?
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, before '66, nations from Africa and Asia were essentially locked out by FIFA's rules.
Yeah.
FIFA offered 0 guaranteed spots to the entire continent of Africa.
0 spots. That is incredibly unfair.
If an African nation wanted to play, they had to battle through a very hard playoff against teams from Asia just to win one single spot.
So how did they respond to this insult?
The African Football Confederation organized a complete boycott. Every single African nation refused to participate in the qualifiers.
It was a huge financial and political risk, but their message was very clear. They said, we exist, we can play, and we will not be treated as an afterthought.
And the beautiful thing is, it worked. The pressure forced FIFA to change. And from 1970 onward, Africa secured guaranteed qualifications.
Once that door opened, the expansion was unstoppable. The tournament grew to 24 teams in 1982.
In 1994, it traveled to the United States, which helped build a massive new domestic league there. By 2002, Asia was finally hosting, with South Korea and Japan sharing it.
And you cannot forget 2010. The World Cup arrives on the African continent for the first time, in South Africa.
Ah, yes, the sound of the vuvuzela.
Even if you do not follow sports, you remember that sound, that constant loud horn echoing through the TV. Some people thought it was just noise, but culturally, that was the sound of an entire continent seizing the microphone and saying, we are the center of the world right now.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the 2022 World Cup and the phenomenal run of Morocco.
They became the first African team in history to reach the semifinals.
And they didn't just get lucky. They systematically defeated European giants. They beat Belgium. They knocked out Spain. They eliminated Portugal.
And the celebrations were everywhere, not just in Morocco. People were flooding the streets in Senegal and Nigeria and Egypt. The victory belonged to the whole continent.
The emotional peak for me was watching Achraf Hakimi.
Yes, Hakimi. He was actually born and raised in Madrid, Spain. His mother was an immigrant who cleaned houses. His father was a street vendor. They worked incredibly hard just to give him a better life.
So when Hakimi scored the winning penalty kick to eliminate Spain, the country he grew up in, he didn't run to the cameras, right?
No, he sprinted straight to the stands. He found his mother in the huge crowd and just collapsed into her arms. A photographer caught that exact second. A son and his mother sharing years of sacrifice and triumph.
You did not need to know the rules of football to understand that image.
Exactly. Millions of people saw their own family struggles in that photo.
It is the ultimate proof that the tournament has evolved into a global mirror, a place where a very divided world can tune in and see its own shared humanity reflected back at.
And the size of that mirror is still expanding. When we look at the 2026 horizon, the scale is almost difficult to understand.
For the first time, it will be hosted by 3 massive nations, the United States, Mexico, and Canada.
Spread across 16 different major cities, and the roster is growing to 48 national.
Think about the math on that. When the opening whistle blows in 2026, data suggests that roughly 6 billion people will tune in at some point.
6 billion. That is over 3/4 of the entire human population.
Viewers who speak thousands of different languages, who live under completely different political systems. But for those 90 minutes, they will all agree to the exact same rules and feel the exact same joy.
It is genuinely breathtaking. We started this deep dive with Jules Rimet, freezing on a boat in 1930, with an unproven idea about world peace.
From there, we watched a poor teenager with a stuffed grapefruit become a king of the sport.
We saw an official hide a global treasure in a shoebox, and a scruffy dog save the day a decade later.
We watched ignored continents force their way to the table, leading to a son embracing his mother after achieving the impossible.
And to you listening to this right now, whether you are commuting, working, or relaxing, I want you to hold on to the core of that history. Think about what it feels like to have a small idea that others might dismiss as crazy.
Think of Rimet on that ship. The journey to success is almost always lonely, but the conviction inside you, that is the engine. Your ideas are enough.
The beautiful game, shared by 6 billion of us.
I will leave you with one final thought to ponder today. We have just mapped out how humanity actually has the capacity to pause its bitter conflicts, bypass language barriers, and unify the attention of 6 billion people around a simple game.
Yes.
If we are genuinely capable of organizing that level of collective focus, what other massive, impossible global problems could we actually solve if we aim that exact same energy at them?
And that is a heavy, beautiful question to walk away with. Just imagine Jules Rimet smiling into that cold ocean wind, knowing what his little idea. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves. Keep learning English with us. Nurture those crazy ideas, and we will catch you on the next one.